Welcome to the Highland Park and Eldorado Railroad. This 24 by 30 foot 3-rail O-scale layout belongs to Gary Clare, a fellow who got started in O-gauge trains very early in his life.
Actually, I got my first train set 2 weeks before I was ever born. My dad, for Christmas of 1952, went to Bloom's Hobby House in Cleveland, Ohio, and decided to buy me a New York Central ABA freight set and a 681 turbine set. And I hadn't even been born yet. So he didn't know whether he was going to be buying trains for a boy or a girl. I wasn't born until January 4th, 2 weeks after Christmas. So that's how basically I was born into it. And I've just had a love and a passion for trains ever since.
Gary's father passed away when he was only 2 years old, so he has no recollection of his father's layout beyond these fuzzy black and white photos. After his father passed, the trains were packed away in the attic for many years. Gary rediscovered those trains when he was about 10.
But I remember as a kid that I used to sneak up to the attic and I would open up the boxes and I would stare and drool all over them. Just hoping someday that I would get to, have the ability to play with them. But that's my earliest recollection of my dad's trains, or when I would sneak to the attic and see those familiar orange and blue boxes.
The tradition of railroading was well established in Gary's family. His grandfather worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad.
My grandfather's name was H.A. Clare, and he was a conductor on the Broadway Limited from 1924 through 1951, and actually I am wearing part of his uniform as we speak.
Now, if that uniform looks familiar, it could be that you've seen Gary wearing it in the halls of the TCA York meet. He's proud of that.
Well, I just love to honor his legacy and his memory, and of course, being the fact that I worked down at Scenic Express with Mr. Shaky, a lot of people consider me to be Shaky's older brother. So it's a lot of fun. It's just something I like to walk around and wear the uniform and just honor my grandfather's legacy.
Gary's sense of honor goes a lot deeper than just honoring his grandfather.
About 10 years ago, I started a military program called Operation S.O.S. Being a former military man, I was in the 104th Armored Cavalry as a tanker, and I did 6 years in the Army. So one day, about 12 years ago, a customer came into our furniture store and had mentioned that their son was over in Iraq and that they were sending him care packages. And the light clicked on, and I thought, I remember the joy and elation that I got from being in the military and receiving those packages. So I decided to start a group called Operation S.O.S, which stands for Support Our Soldiers. Starting about early October, and then Thanksgiving weekend, we have a packing day where we will pack up dozens and dozens of different items from the public donations. We set up tables that look like an assembly line, and we invite the public to come in on the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, and we get roughly about 300 to 350 volunteers that night, and we pack anywhere from 200 to 500 boxes, and we ship it off to the military. In the earlier days, it would go to Iraq, and in the last several years, it's gone to Afghanistan. But I'm also very proud to include the OGR magazine, because there's a lot of male soldiers over there that still relate to electric trains. And so we just want to share a little piece of back home with them as well, and hopefully we can brighten up their Christmas a little bit better.
Back home near Altoona, Pennsylvania, Gary started building this layout in 2000, and it took about 8 years to complete it. He had a plan. Well, sort of.
I had a rough draft, but it more or less evolved it as you went. I went to Lowe's one Christmas Eve, and they were having a 20% off sale on Christmas Eve, so I bought about 50 sheets of plywood, several dozen 2x4s, and the layout is built as solid as a barn floor. I run 16-inch centers with joist hangers, so you can literally walk anywhere on that layout. So then I put 3/4 plywood down with 5/8" Homosote, and the layout just evolved from there.
Gary's curves are mostly 063, which means he can run all but the biggest of steam locomotives. If he had it to do over again, he said he would design the layout for 072 curves. The layout is powered by one ZW and 3 MTH Z4000 transformers, using a wiring scheme drawn up by Gary's son, who is an electrician with Norfolk Southern. With track feeds every 3 feet around the layout, the trains never see a voltage drop due to bad conductivity in the track. Speaking of track, Gary chose to use Atlas track on his railroad. He likes that it is a solid nickel-silver rail, looks good, and is easy to work with. The track is ballasted with 150 pounds of crushed limestone provided by Chuck Locke, the former crew chief for the late Harry Turner's Big Mo trailer. Most of the other scenery materials on the layout came from Jim Elster at Scenic Express. Gary uses the Lionel Legacy system to control the trains. Now, Gary lives near Altoona, within sight of the world-famous Horseshoe Curve. I asked Gary if he had been able to see Nickel Plate Road Steam Engine 765 running excursions on the curve.
He was able to get us 4 tickets for the 765 employee excursion. So yeah, I've ridden, actually had the pleasure of riding behind it, and I think you may have been the engineer that day.
As is the case with most model railroaders, sharing the layout with others is a big part of Gary's enjoyment of the hobby.
The night that I dedicated the layout, I had about 100 visitors and 2 bus loads that came by as part of the TTOS layout tours. And I was very honored to be able to open it up and share it with the public and people from as far away as California and Florida. And I've actually had the pleasure of sharing it with 2 fellows from as far away as Germany. So I was really impressed, really excited about that I was able to share this layout with people from another country. So I've put probably several hundred people through here in the last several years that are, just totally awed when they see the layout.
Gary's built a lot of interesting detail into this layout, and it's got a lot of mainline railroad action too. Let's take a look. Gary has built a great action scene in his downtown area. He uses a fog machine to make all this smoke. The lighted fire trucks came from Jack Pierce and Tim Saggy. The building that's on fire is the Wolf Furniture Company. Now, Gary is also in the furniture business, and the state fire marshal has been called in to investigate the suspicious origin of the fire. Gary has an alibi, however. He was up at Horseshoe Curve taking pictures when the fire started. No matter what the details may be, it makes for a very dramatic scene. Over in the yard, a crew is getting this big P Company T1 out of the roundhouse. The crew handles this huge locomotive very carefully as she moves onto the turntable. Slow and steady in the yard is the name of the game. The 28-inch Bowser turntable is fully operational. Here in the yard, Gary's packed in a tremendous amount of detail, rolling stock, and locomotives. Another area where you can see some fantastic detail is in the interior of this dining car. Jack Pierce built these amazing interiors for the PRR diner. Gary has a nice model of the world-famous Horseshoe Curve on his railroad. He models the era when Pennsylvania Railroad 462 number 1361 was spotted at the curve. Just like the real thing, this is a busy spot on the railroad, with trains running up and down the mountain on tight schedules. After nightfall, there's a big fireworks display up on the mountain at the apex of the curve. Fiber optics provide the fireworks, while the sounds were created by Craig Willard Productions. While the curve gets most of the attention, there are trains running all over Gary's layout. Gary has been part of the OGR family for a long time.
I'm very proud and honored to be part of the OGR family. I mean, and then the fact that you guys give me the magazines that I send to the military every year is very deeply appreciated. It's something that I've always wanted to do for years, was to be able to share my hobby with as many other people as I can.